Hello. Hello, everyone. This is Matthew Pauly, and I'm pleased to announce thank you for, first of all, joining us. And we're pleased to welcome back Sasha Ladipova, former U.S. pharmaceutical executive, and Debbie Lehrman, independent researcher and retired science writer, both who authored the COVID Dossier. February 4th, 2025 was the 5-year anniversary of the declared COVID-19 pandemic. They've now updated their COVID dossier. Their research exposes, quote, how all COVID countermeasures, including the biological warfare agents marketed as COVID-19 vaccines, were created, produced, and distributed in a covert military program where the pharma manufacturers worked as subcontractors. Debbie and Sasha join us to share their insights with a special view on the Canadian and American angle of the operation. I should note there's actually many different countries that are mentioned in their dossier. Keep in mind the explosive theme of the COVID dossier, a record of military and intelligence coordination of the global COVID event. COVID-19 was not a public health event. We now bear with me as we will be digging into the CBRN, which is chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear emergency response for the USA, Canada, and NATO. And let's open the door to this. First of all, before I say the last sentence here, I want to welcome as well Connie Shields. She's part of the Stop C293 committee and so much more. She's got a great Substack. And before we go into the actual overlays and going through showing you the dossier, I'm going to show a little 1-minute video because it's very timely right now. We could lose these 400 ostriches out in BC, and I know it seems strange, but this is actually all connected to the whole biosecurity agenda. So we're just going to play that. It's a message to the CFIA employees and contractors. So I'm just going to play that first, and also thank you. This was actually produced by Connie Shields, who's with us. And so I'm just going to go ahead with that now. And here we go. And go here.
Pushing policies that centralize power and erode our food systems, our freedoms, and our sovereignty. And the most dangerous part, the people who see through it, who ask questions, are being labeled the problem. But history has shown us it's the question.
Okay, so why did that end so soon? Let me just try and press a button on that. Press again.
It didn't start at the beginning either.
Yeah, I noticed that. Okay, let me see if I can. Oh, I see. No, that's just the volume. 1 second here. I could try removing it and adding it. Let me just see if I remove it and I add it. No, you know what I'm going to have to do? I'm going to have to remove this and just re-add it here. Just bear with me for 30 seconds or less. Remove from studio, and then press the present button, and then video file. And let's see if we can find this. Thank goodness it's there. And I'm going to now just let's try to double click. Yes, the double click worked. And there we go. Here we go. One more time, folks. Sorry about that. Again, about a 1-minute video to the CFIA workers regarding the annihilation of the genocide that's going to be attempted at any time now, any day now.
Pushing policies that centralize power and erode our food systems, our freedoms, and our sovereignty. And the most dangerous part, the people who see through it, who ask questions, are being labeled the problem. But history has shown us it's the questioners, not the followers, who protect society's integrity. So to the CFIA workers and frontline professionals, you are being deceived, just like the public. But you have the power to stop this. You can refuse to carry out orders that go against science, against reason, and against the best interests of our nation. This is bigger than one farm. This is about protecting Canada's future, our land, our health, our freedom. And it starts with the courage to say no.
The courage to tell your employer that the orders they are asking you to carry out do not make any sense. Ask why you can't test these birds to settle your own minds. Ask why they are following the suggestions of unelected foreign bureaucrats at the United Nations, World Health Organization, and World Animal Health Organization over the needs of the people of Canada. Ask why the government of Canada would destroy the research done at this particular farm that could in fact help stop the spread of not just avian influenza, but of all pathogens of pandemic potential. You owe it not just to yourself, but to the world, and the world is watching.
Okay, very good. Now I'll remove that from the stage. Remove. There we go. All right. Well, first of all, I guess I didn't give you a chance to say hello. So hello, Sasha and Debbie.
Hi. Good morning.
Hi.
Good morning. Thank you so much for coming back again. And hopefully we're going to have fun here today. So I'm going to, as I mentioned, start with showing people how easy it is to just go and look at your COVID dossier. And it's like an encyclopedia. I'm going to preface it with two very important things that they're not actually mentioned in the dossier. I think this is from elsewhere in your Substack. Here's one. I'm going to put this overlay up. We're living in a state of permanent unannounced war. Public health emergencies have largely the same legal status as war declarations, national emergencies. PHE or PHEC declarations, that's from the WHO, are effectively suspend the Constitution, let the executive branch, including DOD and HHS, usurp the power and neuter the legislative and judicial branches of the government. Once initiated, there are no stopping conditions. See also Legal Walls short version by Catherine Watt. Both the civilians and the rank and file service members are the targets. While this event has been planned and prepared for decades, the crossing of the Rubicon happened by the 2020 live exercise of faking the pandemic via strategic poisoning and hospital murders, subsequent tyranny, and then deployment of injected poisons marketed as life-saving vaccines onto people who were scared and driven into panic by a massive campaign of lies. And then we bring that away. Is that a reasonable, is that from one of your Substacks? I'm not sure, but is that a reasonable?
Yeah, this is from my Substack. Yeah, it's from the summary. I have a summary post where I, kind of summarize everything. I have 500 articles on my Substack, so for ease of navigation and kind of providing people somewhat like overall interpretation of what's going on.
Yes, and I'm going to go now into the exact. By the way, thank you for that. The work that you two have both done on this project is so important. I mean, for the audience to understand here, we have been living under basically a complete propaganda regime that has been telling us this was all about public health emergency, when in fact it was a military exercise being carried out on us by our own, by our own military and intel. So here we go. Next slide. This is now from your Substack, the executive summary. I guess I'll read the bold. COVID was not a public health event. Although it was presented as such to the world's population, it was a global operation coordinated through public-private intelligence and military alliances, and invoking laws designed for CBRN, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear weapons attacks. This dossier, or the dossier, contains information regarding the military intelligence coordination of the COVID biodefense response in the US, UK, Australia, Canada, the Netherlands, Germany, Italy, and more. For some countries, we have extensively documented information. For others, we have some documentation of military intelligence involvement, but not all the details. For as many countries as possible, we list the military intelligence agencies in charge of their country's COVID response, dates on which emergency declarations were made in each country, military intelligence related agencies and bodies in charge of censorship propaganda, and top people with military intelligence jobs who were known or reported to hold leadership positions in the response. We also list connections to global governing bodies, including the EU and UN/WHO, through which the response was coordinated. In the final section, we include a list of military intelligence biodefense alliances that provide multinational frameworks for responding to a bioterror/bioweapons attack. Okay, and now that was number 2. Any comments before I go on to the next one? No? Okay.
It was a good summary that we wrote, I think.
Yeah, it was a very good summary. It was brilliant. Brilliant. All right, the next one. Continuing on from the Substack. Unfortunately, the first word is blotted out by something in the StreamYard thing here. Something providing all of this information in one place. We hope to dispel the notion that COVID was a public health event managed independently by each country's public health agencies, with some limited logistically focused military involvement. We also hope to drive home the shocking realization that not only were military and intelligence agencies in charge of COVID in all of these countries, but the response to what was represented as a public health crisis was coordinated through military alliances, including NATO. This should be the subject of front page news everywhere. We are calling on investigators, whistleblowers, and anyone with information related to this topic to contact us and/or publish the information so that we can continue to construct the full picture of what happened to the world starting in early 2020 and continuing to this day. Just out of curiosity, since you put this up back in March and earlier, have you had further contacts?
Yes, so I received a lot of comments. We originally had only several countries in our dossier, but I received a lot of comments from my readers, and we updated it now with pretty much every region of the world. So we received many more countries and evidence that the military was involved everywhere. It wasn't just NATO. There were other both military and political alliances, like a lot of was coordinated through EU, WHO, and looks like central banks as well.
Oh, surprise.
Yeah, no surprise. And, most recently, actually, yesterday, I updated the dossier. We received information from service members from Swiss Army, and I updated it with the Switzerland. Even though Switzerland is not a NATO country, they had exactly the same procedure. But Switzerland is home to the BIS, Bank of International Settlements. So obviously, there were a lot of ways to bring them into the fold. And so the structure there was almost identical to every other one that we've seen.
Okay. Wow. Okay, that's great. So I'll just jump to the next page in the dossier, introduction. How it started 5 years ago today. Exactly 5 years ago on February 4th, 2020, two things happened that almost nobody knows about, but that played an important role in the course of recent world history. Number one, two declarations for CBRN, weapons of mass destruction, emergencies. By the way, that's chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear. And an EUA, Emergency Use Authorization, and PrEP Act made by the U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services were registered on this date. Again, that was February 4th, 2020. EUA stands for Emergency Use Authorization. Legally, EUA powers are intended for situations of grave immediate emergencies, including weapons of mass destruction. They allow for the use of countermeasures against CBRN, chemical, biological, nuclear, or radiological agents without the regulatory oversight intended to ensure safety and efficacy, because the immediate threat of a CBRN attack is deemed as much more greater than any potential risks caused by the countermeasures. The PrEP Act is the legal indemnity granted to anyone involved in using an EUA countermeasure, because if a weapon of mass destruction is involved, the risk of the CBRN attack is so great that no one should have to face legal consequences for potential collateral damage caused by using unregulated countermeasures. Now, any comments on that?
Yes.
Go ahead, Debbie.
That's something that is actually very relevant to now, because those emergency declarations, well, I don't even know, Sasha, about the EUA declaration, but the PrEP Act declaration is still in place. So we are still in a COVID emergency, according to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Today, that secretary is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So according to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., we are in a state of emergency for COVID that necessitates giving legal immunity to everyone and anyone who does anything related to COVID countermeasures, which include the mRNA vaccines, anyone administering, advertising, transporting, studying, talking about dreaming about breathing on, they all have indemnity. So the HHS secretary believes that there's a state of emergency requiring that we do that, and that we continue to administer and recommend EUA countermeasures, which have been developed and manufactured with no regulatory oversight at all.
It is shocking that this is still in play. And I understand in Canada, I just learned this week, our current government, the new Carney regime, is already extended. It's been actually under Trudeau before him, even extended until 2029. We're still in a COVID, and I understand in the States, it's more than just COVID, right? And I think in Canada too, it's things like bird flu, H5N1, monkeypox, Ebola. There's a whole bunch of these huge emergencies. Think of the extraordinary amount of powers that are granted to the state that should not be at all, because we are not in those emergencies. This is appalling. Yeah. Anyway, so
yeah, so this
and it's not.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So all of this. So in the U.S., all of this is under so-called PrEP Act.
Yes.
In Canada, technically, there's no PrEP Act, but they utilize very similar laws and frameworks to announce these emergency declarations based on nothing. So what people need to understand, when the government announces a public health emergency of grave concern that's supposed to last until end of 2029, so we're now in a decade of COVID emergency.
Yes.
People need to realize this announcement requires no justification. Nothing needs to exist. It means they're lying. Okay, so the first thing comes out of their mouths, we're under public health emergency. You need to understand they're lying because they never have to justify that statement. They just make the statement. That statement may be made based on something existing, something potentially existing. So potentially asteroid can hit us. So are we under asteroid public health emergency of great concern globally, because you don't know where it's going to hit? Yes. Forever, right? For thousands of years now. And under this ridiculous declaration of a potential threat of grave concern, it's grave concern if we are hit by asteroid. I agree. So under that pretense, they suspend constitutional governance. That's what people need to realize. They lie, they fabricate a threat, and suspend constitutions everywhere. In the United States, the constitution has been suspended. In Canada, it has been suspended. In EU, it's been suspended. And so we have no constitutional governance anymore until these declarations are in place. And correct, under current regime in the US, it's up to the opinion of Robert Kennedy Jr. That's what the law says. And so it's his opinion that we're in this grave danger of COVID for another 5 years. And under this grave danger, everyone who thinks about COVID, does anything about COVID, is completely absolved. So they have so we call PrEP Act license to kill, because it is a license to kill. And in Canada, they have the same collection of laws, which is license to kill. That's why they're planning to kill those ostriches. It's under the same exact framework. And whatever they can do to the ostriches, I guarantee you they can do to you, to the citizens of Canada.
Exactly.
The laws are written that way. That's why ostriches are so important. So they're going to come and machine gun them. They can do the same to you.
That's correct. This is it's frightening that this whole thing with the CFIA, people think it's just, a lot of people don't realize it's not just about the ostriches. This sets a precedent under the UN World Organization of Animal Health stamp out policy, combined with the UN WHO One Health. It's an equity of animals and humans. They're setting a precedent.
So you're equated to a tree.
Correct.
In terms of what your life is worth.
Correct.
And in WOA, they even state that they're following One Health agenda.
That's right.
And interesting that you say that, because in paragraph 5 of the decision that Judge Zen put out on May 13th, it says courts must respect Parliament's choice to assign decision-making power to administrative bodies. So the courts cannot overrule. Wow. And then he goes on to say, where was it now?
Okay, before we go ahead.
Must also respect the demonstrated scientific and technical expertise of administrative agencies.
Oh my gosh.
Court generally stay out of scientific debates and focus on whether the decision makers use their expertise to make reasonable, procedural, fair decisions.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
in a nutshell, your defense is thrown out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they
So that is extreme.
Go ahead,
any
Sasha.
defense. They preempt any defense and any of your rights to come and say, no, I have a right to own ostrich, or I have a right to own my own body. So
Yes.
they're saying, no, you're no longer competent to
Yes.
decide that. And even the
Exactly.
court is not competent to decide that. All
That's
the
right.
power is now delegated to unelected science experts.
Yeah.
So it's as blatant as you can imagine. Suspend all the laws, suspend governance, suspend constitution, human rights, delegate everything to these unelected, completely controlled and bought out experts, expert
Exactly.
class.
Exactly. Now, if I could just,
And I think it's really,
Yep.
oh, sorry.
Well, go ahead, Deb. I'll let you have the last comment, and we'll try and pull it back into the. Go ahead.
I think it's really important to emphasize that this is not political. This is not about
Yes.
right or left, conservative, liberal.
No.
It is not about any of that at all. Not at all. It's about
No.
the global powers versus us, the people.
Mhm.
And so if we get distracted and we think that one party or another party or one person or another person is going to come and save us from this, we are actually using we are wasting our time and energy, when what we should be spending our time and energy on is focusing on the problem and getting as many people as we can aware of the problem. I don't even know what the solution is, but I know that awareness is the beginning of it. So people need to be aware that the suspension of the laws is not something that one party or the other party is doing to you. Voting is not going to solve this. Having one or other person in charge of one or other agency is not going to help you at all, as we have seen in the United States. And so please, please, please focus on, and also, when they try to bait you against a group, one group or another group, oh, those communists, oh, those fascists, oh, those Nazis, no, oh, those Nazi truckers, that's what they try
Division.
to do
Yes.
in order to
Yeah.
distract us from the fact that this is a globally coordinated techno-feudalist cabal, is what I would call
Yes.
it.
Yes.
And NATO and all of these military alliances. So when we say in our dossier, I think it's really hard to explain. So people keep asking me, so what? So the military was in charge. So two things. First of all, that means the government lied to you.
Yes.
The government that you think has your best interests in mind doesn't. So no matter whose party it was, in the United States, we had Trump, then we had Biden, it was the same thing. So it doesn't matter who's in charge, the government lied to you. On whose behalf did they lie to you? Okay. On whose behalf is the intelligence and military operation being carried out? It's being
Precisely.
carried out on behalf of a global, I call it public-private partnership, because it's important to realize that it's both the governments and the corporations together that are doing this.
Correct.
You can't just address the corporate greed, and you can't just address the political power. You have to understand that they've been fused together on a global level. And
Correct.
that's what we need to address.
Absolutely. Well said. And I just like to point out that it's almost like it's a coup from within, because we have a bunch of these government people, like half of Trudeau's cabinet were WEF people, right? They literally went through the program. And right now, I mean, when we have major political parties both supporting the UN Agenda 2030 and SDGs, and all the other UN things like WOHA and such, that means they're committed to NGOs in another country that are funded by billionaires that essentially have this public-private partnership. So it's basically, that's how it's coupling right into our local government. So that's the problem. Now, if I could just bring us back to where we were in the dossier, so people can see this introduction part of the dossier. Next slide, I believe, is this one. In order to activate EUA, and you just tell me, by the way, if you've detected that I've already showed something. In order to activate the EUA, the law requires a determination by the Secretary of HHS that there is a public health emergency. That involves a CBRN agent or agents, or a disease or condition that may be attributable to such agents. So when an EUA was officially activated on February 4, 2020, it was in essence a declaration of a state of emergency involving weapons of mass destruction. The PrEP Act, this PrEP Act, Public Health Emergency Declaration, has been repeatedly renewed, and it's currently in effect through December 31, 2029. And just one last thing I'll just add on this. Don't forget that for chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear, we're talking about, we know now the mortality of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, gain-of-function virus, confirmed now. It's spread out of the White House that it's not, something that was natural and anybody else, but the actual lethality, going by the government's own numbers, is that of the seasonal flu, with a 1,000-fold difference, though, in mortality between the young and the old. It's really focused on people who are 80 years and above with multiple comorbidities. Okay, that's it. Now I'm going to go to the next slide. Anyone have any further comments on this one?
Yeah, just one comment about the so-called gain-of-function virus.
Yes.
So as you know, Trump administration suddenly came up with, now we're telling you the truth. Now we're telling you the truth. Yeah. It wasn't a zoonotic virus that we told you at the beginning, and Trump administration censored everyone who questioned that. But all of a sudden, 5 years later, they realized that they were lying, and now they need to switch to another lie, that this is a Wuhan leaked gain-of-function virus, and it's Fauci's fault. Okay, and I've predicted 2 years ago, I wrote an article, I said they're going to roll out the second lie, that this is what it is. Fauci made a gain-of-function virus in Wuhan and released it, and it leaked, right?
Yes.
So that's a lie also. It wasn't a gain-of-function virus made by Wuhan and Fauci. It's a military attack using so-called biomimetic or hoax bioweapons, which are chemicals that simulate effects of certain diseases in strategic locations. And the rest of it, majority of it, was simply just by lies, propaganda, and trapping people into the hospital murder protocols with false PCR tests, false positive PCR tests. PCR tests are not diagnostic, have never been. It's a lab tool, so they use the unvalidated lab tool with the secret parameters, testing people for asymptomatic spread, which is another absolute nonsense.
Yes.
And manufactured by Deborah Birx, as Debbie actually very well describes in her new book, which we should advertise here.
Thanks, Sasha.
Yes.
Yeah, I was traveling and reading it, and it's fascinating. So Deborah Birx actually manufactured all these, or rather was a person who was in charge of introducing all these policies of tracking asymptomatic spread, declaring people falsely, carriers of this scary virus. So all of this is just a bunch of lies on top of each other. And currently, Trump administration is lying again with the second set of lies that this was some sort of a Fauci-fault Wuhan-made virus. And so that's what we need to be, again, focusing on, that they will.
Sasha, I'm going to provide a little bit different perspective. Mm-hmm. Sasha and I have slightly different interpretations of things that involve like motives and stuff. That's why the dossier is very dry and is very factual and just has a lot of links to a lot of documents. So my interpretation is very slightly different from Sasha's. I think, yes, they are absolutely now coming out and saying that it was Fauci who was doing research in Wuhan. I think there is gain-of-function research being done in various places. I think they are trying to do all kinds of biotech things that may or may not be possible in terms of engineering viruses, engineering humans. God only knows what they think they can do. I don't think most of it is possible. I think it is possible that there are bioengineered viruses and that they may or may not leak out of labs, and they may or may not cause anything at all. We know, like you said, that this virus or whatever it was not very dangerous. But we also know that there was a wave of unusual type of flu that was happening in the fall of 2019. I've talked to many doctors and people who were at hospitals when this wave was happening. It could have just been a flu wave that they then latched onto. We don't know. The point of the dossier and the point of what Sasha and I have been working on all this time is that it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. And so where Sasha would tell you that it's a second wave of lies, I would tell you it's a second wave of distractions. Well, yeah. I don't know if it's a lie or not. I just know that now the Trump administration, which, as Sasha says correctly, started censoring anyone who said it was a manufactured bioweapon in January 2020. They started censoring. So that was the Trump administration. So now they're saying, oh, no, no, no. It was Biden who censored, first of all. It wasn't us. So it's all political. It was Biden, Biden, Biden. And now we're the good guys. And now we're going to tell you the truth. That is what they're doing. That's the distraction. So whatever happened with the virus, whatever it was, whether it was a chemical thing or whether it was nothing or whether it was just a flu virus or whether it was, something that leaked out of a lab, the point is that's not what we need to worry about. The virus did not kill the world.
No.
The lockdowns and the vaccines killed the world. And so it's the lockdown until vaccine response that was globally coordinated that killed the world. So instead of asking what is the origin of the virus, what Sasha and I are asking is, what is the origin of the response to whatever it was? And so let's stop focusing on the virus, because we can argue all day long. Sasha can tell you a lot of stuff that shows that it might have been a chemical that was dispersed in various places. I don't necessarily believe that. I can tell you that it might have been nothing or it might have been something. It doesn't really matter. The response would have been the same. And in fact, the whole global public-private partnership around biodefense was such that no matter what, there would have been a pandemic response. It could have been a virus. It could have been a fake virus. It could have been, whatever somebody made up. It could have been a few people who got sick somewhere. That response was going to happen no matter what.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right, Sasha?
Yeah, it's important to understand. Yes, exactly. So the response, so the fact that the response is still classified, the fact that we still don't know who actually ultimately designed that strategy. So we know that Deborah Birx was a very key implementer of that strategy, and somehow she was given deference by everyone, including President Trump. So.
Well, guess what, though, Sasha? She was given deference by everyone but President Trump. Now he's lashing out because he hated her and he knew that she was usurping his power, or that the powers that she represented were staging a coup against his government and every other government. And so that's why he went after USAID, I believe, because she's from USAID. And USAID is...
You know what, though? You know what? I'm going to suggest that we try and bring it back to the dossier now. But first, since twice I'm going to show this. This is the first time here. This is the book. It's the #1 in public policy right now on Amazon. The Deep State Goes Viral. Pandemic Planning, and I can't read the rest of it. Can you tell us what the rest of the subtitle is?
And the COVID coup. It's Pandemic Planning and the COVID coup.
Very good. Everybody who wants to really understand this is the book. It's already got #1 in public policy, so go for it.
Yeah, it's great, and actually, I read it on the airplane. I was traveling to the East Coast, and frankly, I found, even me, looking and researching this for years, I found a lot of interesting material for myself that I didn't know. And this is an incredible book. I highly recommend it.
All right,
Thank you, Sasha. That's so nice. You're in it, of course.
I'll show it again later, but now we resume on slide number 6. This is in the dossier. This is now just thrown in the middle of this discussion of these points. It says a pharmaceutical executive was caught on tape saying that the U.S. Department of Defense called to inform him, quote, that the newly discovered SARS-2 virus posed a national security threat. And this was
so this is the #2. So we said there were 2 events that were important in world history. #1, the 2 declarations of emergency dated February 4th, 2020.
Those ones,
Number two, this recording shows that on the same day, February 4th, 2020, pharmaceutical executives received a call from the Department of Defense, and I'm going to let Sasha tell you what that call was about. Because Sasha is the one who uncovered this. This is a smoking gun. If we were in a normal world where there was normal journalism, this recording would be on the front page of everything, everywhere, because it shows that a declaration that the national security apparatus considered whatever it was, let's say it was a virus from Wuhan, they considered the Wuhan virus a weapon of mass destruction, or not even, they didn't say that, but a national security threat starting in February 2020 when nobody had died and barely anybody was infected with it. So they said to the pharmaceuticals executives, it is a national security threat when everybody else was saying it's a public health emergency.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's so yeah, and still today, everyone is, even on our side, most people are treating it as mismanaged public health. It's not a mismanaged public health, and this clearly shows that the military was in charge even before. So the recording I received from a whistleblower from that meeting that's recorded. This is an executive meeting at AstraZeneca at the end of 2020, when they were celebrating that they got the monoclonal antibodies approved in the United States. And this is a Zoom recording. I have a video of it. I released only audio, and out of caution to protect the whistleblower. But basically, it's a short recording, 6 minutes, of CEO of AstraZeneca, Pascal Soro, and VP of monoclonal antibodies, Mark Esser, discussing this. And Mark Esser kind of recounts the history of how they started working with DARPA, which apparently they started in 2017 when they were approached by DARPA, by Colonel Matt Habburn, which is the third picture on that page. And Colonel Matt Habburn also himself claims that he is the mastermind of the pandemic preparedness plan. He has TED Talks discussing this. And during the Operation Warp Speed, he was one of the key people. I think he was responsible for vaccine development, like a project managing vaccine development for Operation Warp Speed. So there are several interviews with him, public interviews. So he approached AstraZeneca and a number of other pharmaceutical companies to structure this consortium. And the consortium I believe they started structuring it somewhere around 2012. There are hundreds of pharmaceutical companies and medical device companies.
Oh, excuse me. The consortium started in 2012.
Yeah, around 2012, they started structuring these consortia to work on these pandemic preparedness stuff. Mm-hmm. So they've enrolled
public-private partnership, government and companies working together.
Yes. They've enrolled hundreds of companies into this, and there's like two of them. There's MCDC and I'm forgetting. So they're both managed by Advanced Technology International, which is a DoD company that manages DoD weapons buying, large projects, building a new carrier or building a new airplane or buying, materials for their weapons. And so this company, ATI, manages these two consortia, of which AstraZeneca was one, and Pfizer and Moderna were also included in this consortium. And so the AstraZeneca specifically joined it in 2017. At the time, also Mark Esser says on tape that when Matt Habburn approached them and told them that the focus of this consortium is to rapidly develop vaccines and therapeutics and other products for pandemic situations where DoD will identify pandemic potential viruses, not clear how, and pharma companies will be making these products within 60 days of DoD identifying these things. And to which Mark Esser's reaction was, I thought it was science fiction. That's what he says. And because this is correct, it is science fiction. You can't make products, you can't make medical products within 60 days, no matter what technology you think you have. Yep. All of that was a fabricated storyline to produce, essentially, in my opinion, this is my opinion, to produce weapons. And
by the way, Dr. David E. Martin has put forward the receipts to show the actual planning way back to like 2014. Ralph Barrick was working on this spike protein, and it goes further back all the way back to 1965 when they first identified that the coronavirus was a perfect platform for bioweapons. But anyway, go ahead.
Right. Well, so exactly. So this was their idea of creating these essentially public health hoaxes, I would say.
Yes.
These full large-scale PSYOP operation where you, first of all, if you also recall, the public is consistently propagandized for decades by Hollywood, by writers, by game makers, by all sorts of news media that's like fake news and stuff, into believing that these pandemic viruses can be either naturally evolving or created in labs, such that you release it, or it leaks, or it evolves, and half the world dies very rapidly. And then they also, the same movies, if you think about Outbreak and Contagion, if you've seen those movies, what do you see in those movies? immediately after some official, usually CDC, says it's a pandemic virus. Then immediately helicopters and tanks arrive and lock down the cities, or lock down this bank facility where this was happening, or like immediate lockdown. So they were propagandizing for decades the whole procedure. We say something, we say keywords, you all panic and start like running like crazy, and we arrive with tanks and helicopters
and guns.
Yes, this was and we put you in jail,
and just as
we inject everyone. Okay, so
correct.
That's what it was all about. So they've spent gazillion dollars doing all that, paying Hollywood to create this movie, and always these movies, which kind of like a BS story, they always have all stars cast, all of them. Like the biggest stars are always.
If I could just interject for a moment, in the first week of January of 2020, on Netflix, at least in Canada, was the film Contagion with Dustin Hoffman and all these big stars, and it's exactly the scenario you talk about.
Yes.
And you know, when just earlier we talked about this Trump coming up with this thing about, oh, it's not zoonotic. We agree it's not zoonotic now. If he's coming out and clarifying that, that's even more of a reason why he should be removing these states of declarations of the PrEP Act and such, because we are in a very, very precarious position. At any time, they could say this is H5N1 emergency and all this stuff is going to happen. But anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So that was their vision that they rammed into everyone's head with these movies and stuff for decades. That at the same time, in parallel, they were working with pharma companies, again, propagandizing now professionals like Mark Esser, who knows this is BS. Well, the way they propagandize professionals is, of course, with lots of money. And, you know, Mark Esser can disagree personally, but AstraZeneca loves DoD dollars. So once the DoD dollars start flowing, then Mark Esser's, you know, he shuts up and he starts working on those projects. That's exactly what happened. And then he's all happy at the end of 2020 that his monoclonal antibody got on the market. So everybody is satisfied, except, of course, you know, the public is now entrapped into this nightmare for decades now.
Yes, yes. 2029 now. We're still in this. Now, if I could just get back to the thing here, the dossier. It's important to note that there were fewer than a dozen on February 4th, 2020, when they did this declaration. There were fewer than a dozen confirmed cases of the novel coronavirus disease, which probably would have been PCRs, in the U.S. with 0 deaths. So there's 0 deaths in the United States, and they thought it appropriate to treat this as a chemical, biological, radiological, or nuclear attack and suspend the Constitution with 0 deaths. Worldwide count was fewer than 500. There was nothing about the virus, at least as it was presented publicly, that would make anyone believe it posed a threat to national security. These 2 events are remarkable for several reasons. They indicate that the beginnings of COVID were rooted in national security machinations, not public health considerations. They also strongly suggest that the deployment of the EUA medical countermeasures under public health emergency declarations was officially launched at a time when an emergency much less a national or a global one could not possibly have been determined. No public health parameters justifying that a novel virus posed a threat to national security existed at the time the EUA and PrEP Act declarations were made.
Yeah.
All right.
And so what Sasha and I have understood, I think this is also an important point to make. What we've come to understand through this is that declarations of emergency are actually administrative tools. They're not actually they have nothing to do with the real world. They have nothing to do with anything that's happening in the real world. They have to do with changing the legal structure in which we live, as Sasha was saying. So a declaration of emergency allows you to suspend constitutional rights, to suspend judicial review, to suspend congressional action on anything. And so when on February 4th, 2020, they made that declaration, like if that were a real national security emergency, then the executives who were talking about how this happened would have been talking about like a very serious, scary incident, right? It's very scary to get a phone call that says, you would think, there's a national security threat. It's like saying there's a, like Sasha said, that there's a something hurtling towards Earth from space. It's like that. It's like, oh my God, something's happening. That's a grave threat. You would be scared if somebody said that to you normally. But if you're a pharmaceutical executive or somebody in the biodefense industrial complex, that doesn't mean anything. You understand, and these executives understood, and everybody who made in the military and in the national security state understood that this declaration wasn't about something happening. It wasn't about a meteor hurtling towards Earth or a dangerous virus that was about to kill everyone. It had absolutely nothing to do with that. It had to do with changing the legal framework so that they could then operate with no legal constraints. That's
Correct.
all it means. So from now on, everybody needs to think of national security threat declarations as a legal mechanism. It has and that has nothing to do with anything that's happening in the real world. And that's what it demonstrated. And that's a really scary thing because people respond like in the movies, and in real life, they definitely respond this way. You tell them there's a national security threat, they're going to get scared. It means that
Yes.
somebody's trying to attack us.
It's
A
using
national
fear.
security threat is either war or terrorism. That's a
Mhm.
national security
Mhm.
threat. That's what it means. That's the definition. So if somebody's trying to attack us with weapons, either a terrorist or another entity, country, or group is trying to come and destroy us, the citizens of this country. That's a national security threat. That's scary.
Exactly. And let me just point out what I know that Sasha has said in a recent interview. You cannot, in the public health world, it's impossible. It's never been the case that you can prescriptively declare a pandemic. The only way you know that you've had a pandemic is a year goes by, you note there's been a lot of people sick and you have a certain percentage amount of excess mortality that's occurred around the world at the same time, then you could say that's a pandemic.
Mhm.
So they exaggerate everything and just use this fear thing. And anyway,
Yeah.
now
So
go ahead,
the
Sasha.
one of the most insidious things is that they propagandize the public that they can, by looking at a model of computer model of a virus, they can say it's going to cause pandemic and kill half the world. This is what they were. This part is pure science fiction. There is no science today that can do that. But it appeared, especially at the beginning, it appeared that a whole bunch of professionals who should have known better, who actually worked in the space, who actually were like part of the intelligence and military apparatus, such as Andrew Huff, for example. I don't necessarily want to pick on him, but at the beginning, I was following him on Twitter. He was part of this work. And he was saying how he was terrified when these announcements came out, how he, with insider knowledge, he was terrified. And he was planning to move, or moved already, from San Francisco to like somewhere in the woods in Michigan, because he believed this, okay? This absolute nonsense garbage that by looking at a computer model, you can say that this is it's a horrible, they cannot, like, the models are models.
If I could just summarize one point here. This is from the film in the presentation, More Harm Than Good, by the Canadian COVID Care Alliance, one of the best explanations of all of this. And they show there are 6 levels of scientific evidence. And the one that's modeling is the lowest form of evidence. It is the lowest form of evidence. Go ahead.
It's nothing.
I'm going to add something to that. It's not nothing. It's worse than nothing. So there's a really smart Czech scientist who I talked to, and some of whose articles appeared on Brownstone. And he has an article entitled "Models Are Weapons of Mass Destruction."
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Exactly.
So I think everybody should keep that title in mind. Anytime you hear the model says this, say, models are weapons of mass destruction. Nope, we're not really going to listen to that.
Yeah, and this is exactly the same with COVID. And again, I bring it back to the ostriches and avian flu. Same thing. It's a model. Yeah. There's no such thing. And that's why when you talk about the ostrich story, you see all these inconsistencies. Like, they will test 2 birds, but they won't test the healthy birds, but they won't, because they're fitting these tests, these fake tests that they're taking, to the model. And they don't want necessarily the data to leak out that this is just a model. And immediately, once you start doing these tests with controls, they immediately fall apart. So that's what it all hinges on, these models that they say, oh, it's a chimeric, blah, blah, blah. And then they make these announcements based on nothing, no data, prospectively. So such that they did this announcement on February 4th. And then a month later, Pentagon press conference, they announced on March 5th that they received the pathogen and they're growing it in their labs. Up to March 5th, there was nothing at all in the U.S. No case, like maybe like a handful of cases that arrived somewhere, and no deaths. And then after that announcement, we see all the cases and all the deaths start. So again, they're just announcing a campaign, and then they're moving forward with the campaign. Pandemics are retrospective. Epidemics are retrospectives.
Yes.
Outbreaks are retrospective. You can't say there is an outbreak of something when you have one case.
Exactly.
It's not an outbreak.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
That's exactly right.
Just bring us back to that we were just saying there. On this day 5 years ago, the countermeasures CBRN countermeasure deployment campaign was officially launched against a poorly defined illness that was allegedly to have killed a few hundred people worldwide, allegedly being the key word there. Within 6 weeks of this date, in order to ensure a market for the countermeasures, among other aims, the lockdown until vaccine response, which is a military counter-terrorism plan and has nothing to do with public health, went into effect all over the world. And just bring up the next one, 9, why this information is critical. It's crucially important to understand that COVID was a globally coordinated response based on legal frameworks intended for biodefense, biowarfare situations. The attack that initiated the global COVID response could have been real, perceived, or invented, regardless of the trigger. The lockdown until vaccine paradigm originated in the military intelligence biodefense playbook, not in any scientifically based or epidemiologically established public health plan. This means that nothing about the response, masking, distancing, lockdowns, vaccines, was part of the public health plan to respond to a disease outbreak. Rather, every aspect of the response was intended to induce public panic in order to gain compliance with biodefense operations, culminating with the injection of an unregulated mRNA products, which were legally treated as biodefense military countermeasures, MCMs, into billions of human beings. Who ordered and directed these operations? Who benefited from them? Who was and still is covering them up? We have been investigating these questions for the last several years, and we hope many who read this will join us moving forward. That's a great one. Any comments on that one? Okay, I'll go right.
I think that speaks for itself.
Yeah, I think it speaks for itself pretty darn good. Yeah. You spent a lot of time putting that together. That was very impressive writing. And number 10, call to action. Most journalists in both corporate and alternative spaces are either unaware or unwilling to cover the military intelligence, biodefense, global coordination aspects of COVID. We need to change that. Please help us shift the conversation to focus on the true nature of the COVID response and the existential questions raised by it. To learn more, you'll find extensive research and analysis on our Substacks. And I'll just pop that up quickly. They are the Due Diligence in Art Substack. People take a screenshot right now so you can find this easier. And also Debbie Lerman's Substack as well. And those are the two Substacks of the co-creators of the COVID Dossier. So get your screen snapshot, and here we're going to drop it now. There we go, dropped. Okay, so now, thank you, Robert. Robert's being very helpful, handing me lots of things to get to. Number 12, this is the COVID Dossier Canada. Now, this is what we put in the billing of this show today, is that we're going to go through the Canadian and the American, and then we've already spent a lot of time just going through the intro to the COVID Dossier, so we'll try and do this a little bit quicker. So Military Dossier Canada, military intelligence agencies and special committees involved in response. Canadian Armed Forces, CAF, Operation Laser, 24,000 person response force. And if you click on that ref in this picture, it'll take you to the actual documentation showing you the military operation that's been documented in the public. And the second bullet point, CAF, that's Canadian Armed Forces Vector, Vaccine Planning and Distribution. And again, you click on the ref in the dossier, and it will take you to the actual documentation publicly available about this operation Vector. And finally, Cabinet Committee on COVID-19. And then you click on that, it will show you the actual cabinet committee and details about that. And then we get into this thing about dates and agencies, the agencies / committees. Dates, sorry, those agencies, committees were publicly known to be in charge. And I think that actually is fully on this slide, 13. Well, although
those are the declarations of emergency. Actually, let's go back because I'd like to talk for a minute about this. This is important.
Sure, go
the
ahead.
The reason that we included, so let's say you just saw, oh, well, the Canadian Armed Forces had an operation to respond and an operation for vaccines, and there was a committee. Oh, that seems like that could just be that they're the most organized, arm of government, and so maybe they can help us because we have an emergency. The reason we put the dates on it, and if you want to put it up again, it's very important. The dates that those agencies and committees were in charge is super duper important, because what we were talking about just now is that in January 2020, there was no emergency anywhere of anything. So if in January 2020, the Canadian government called 24,000 armed forces members to form something, January 23rd, Operation Laser,
yes.
24,000 person response.
How did they know?
23rd,
How did they
2020, Operation, 24,000 people. There's nothing happening anywhere. So why is the military organizing a 24,000 person response force? Okay. Why on March 2nd is Operation Laser? The planning meeting was on the 3rd, and then it was officially launched on March 2nd. Again, so it's important not just to say that the military was in charge. It's important to say it started when there was nothing, not even any emergency. On March 4th, again, nothing's happening anywhere at all. In fact, pretty much until February 27th, which is the date that I identified as the switch in the narrative in terms of the media. But like late February, early March, they were just starting to whip up the panic. But nothing was happening. Again, nobody was getting sick. Nobody was dying anywhere. And the official cabinet committee, every country in early March, late February, which in the United States was February 27th, and early March, formed a committee within the government whose operations were completely secret and classified. And they became the official committee that was in charge of the COVID response in every government. And that's what the dossier shows. So again, individually, if you look at each one of these things separately, it might look to you like, oh yeah, that could be normal. Maybe they thought it was an emergency. But if you look at it all together, there's no way to make sense of it if there really was
if there wasn't
only make
foreknowledge.
sense of it if there wasn't foreknowledge and coordinated planning. Exactly.
Yes.
That's right.
And when you look at the dossier, all the countries that we've profiled, exactly the same thing happens. So you see that the military gets involved before anything happens. So January 23rd, so they're ostensibly only, the virus was only sequenced on January 9th. So you have 2 weeks later, you have already a massive military planning going on in Canada and in all these other countries. So,
but when you say sequenced, you're talking about the theoretical model that was put together by averaging.
Model, they're saying sequenced, but I think they just uploaded the model to the GenBank.
Yeah, we know who did that, and we know that he basically looked at the SARS-CoV-2 virus and looked at some other bat viruses and just cobbled together an averaged model. This was not extracted.
And even said that that's what he did.
He admitted to it.
Yeah.
Does anyone remember his name?
Was it Eddie Holmes? Was it Eddie Holmes from Australia? Because he's a major player here.
I thought it was someone.
It could have been, or Christian Drosten. It could have been Christian Drosten in Germany.
Yeah.
It could have been him too. They were working together.
They were all working together. So they plopped this model into the bank. It's an average model. It represents nothing.
Exactly.
Even Ralph Barrick himself says that if you don't have the exact sequence of a pathogenic virus, and if you deviate by one nucleotide, it's bunk. Okay.
Which means that the whole thing is bunk.
But there is no PCR technology that can give you 100% accurate model. They always have errors. So this is the massive fraud.
Yes.
There is no technology today that can accurately sequence a pathogenic virus, a really pathogenic virus. All of them are averaged. all of them, and nobody can actually predict how the proteins and how the bodies will respond to a particular virus. So they're very upfront about it, that this is just a model, average model. It's a best guess. And then 2 weeks later, we have massive worldwide coordinated military planning going on and military committees being structured in every country that we looked at. So
Yes.
my personal opinion, how I would characterize this, it's not a response, it's an attack.
Exactly.
And it's a declared attack. So they declared and attacked.
Exactly. Planned, declared, and attacked.
Declared, attacked. It's not a response.
Let's look at some of those dates. So this is for Canada. March 13th, Quebec Provincial Public Health Emergency. March 16th, Prince Edward Island. March 17th, British Columbia. March 17th, Alberta as well, and Ontario. And then the 18th, British Columbia. These are all declaring emergencies. March 18th, Saskatchewan and Yukon. And then March 19th, Northwest Territories and Nunavut. And then March 20th, Manitoba. And March 22nd, Nova Scotia, provincial state of emergency. So in a matter of a couple of days.
Right. So what's important to know here is also that in a public health emergency, you don't declare any emergency until there are clusters of cases that require treatment. So
correct.
You can't.
Correct.
Emergency for a public health outbreak simultaneously everywhere when there's no actual clusters of sickness or even anything happening anywhere. So preemptively to declare these states of emergency is also an unprecedented and completely unrelated to public health. It's an unprecedented event. So if you look at these declarations, many of them are unprecedented in the history of Canada. The fact that they all happen simultaneously is completely unprecedented in the history of Canada.
I'm just going to repeat what you just said, just to emphasize it. It's in public health history. We have never seen this before, where you all at the same time. These are meant to be local declarations.
Right.
You should only be declaring them when you've got cases that are actually fatalities. It's a serious thing. But all across Canada in 3 days, all of the provinces and territories were declaring public health emergencies, which is impossible because there were not serious cases at that time in all those places. Anyway, go ahead.
Right. Yeah. So again, and that's what the dossier is for. So if people tend to latch onto one or two little things and say, well, the military or this committee or this declaration, it's the all of them together. That's what the dossier is showing. All together, it could not have happened this way.
No.
There is no conceivable way in which all of these declarations of emergency, all of these committees, all of this military response and intelligence and propaganda and censorship could have happened everywhere in the world, all at the same time, in response to something that wasn't happening. It couldn't have happened simultaneously. It couldn't have happened. Sorry, it couldn't have happened spontaneously.
No,
it could not. There is
it
no
would be
conceivable way. That's what the dossier is showing.
Exactly. It would be the statistical chance of that would be 1 in a trillion. Or something like that. It's like impossible for all intents and purposes. And I'm going to go to the next one, which is the military/IC. And what's the IC stand for?
IC is intelligence community. It's probably more of a US word, but I use it as a shorthand for intelligence community.
That's fine. Military intelligence community affiliated groups involved in messaging, propaganda, censorship. CAF began to gather intelligence on pandemic disinformation in January 2020. And again, you click on the ref and you can see the documentation in the public space. C8 in bullet point 2, CAF deployed PSYOP program on civilians. Number 3, Canadian Joint Operations Command, CJOC, and there's a reference to that. Canadians Military Intelligence Unit, Precision Information Team, PIT. And again, there's 2 references on that. Key figures in COVID response linked to military intelligence community, UN and WHO. Bill Blair, and there's a reference to that. Chrystia Freeland, and there's 2 references to that. Brian Santarpia, and there's a reference to that. And Theresa Tam, the infamous Theresa Tam, and Dr. Gary Kobinger. Okay.
So these are people we specifically gathered information on. Actually, we were sent information as well from people who you may never have heard of. I know people have heard of Chrystia Freeland and Theresa Tam in Canada. But the people who are really in charge are not the people who you hear about, right? Because they're
Right.
the intelligence and military people who are doing this, and NATO in particular, NATO generals and NATO coordinators who you've never heard of, nobody has ever heard of, and that's the way it's supposed to be. So we're all supposed to be looking at Fauci.
Right.
We're all supposed to be, right? We're all
Right.
supposed to be looking at those people who were shoved in front of the cameras, and we were being told that they were the planners, that they were in charge. Fauci
Actually,
killed, Fauci did, Fauci made the law, Fauci closed the schools,
I actually
Fauci,
have a slide on this because this is one of those cases where I actually expanded the ref. I clicked on the ref, and here's what I got. Your Substack, Fauci was not in charge of COVID policy. The National Security Council was. There you go.
Yeah. Right. And that's in the US, but that's why we included the names, because people keep asking us who did it, who's in charge. Now, as you can see from the dossier, even the few names that we have, because again, we only know the people that we can find references for, and most of the people were completely classified, so we don't know who they are. But if you take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in Canada, and we have about 10 in the US, and we have a few, so that's like maybe 50 people that we can actually specifically show were related. So 50 people were in charge. In addition to that, hundreds of people in the military and intelligence industrial complex in NATO. So you can't really point to one person or even one group. It's a huge conglomerate that is all structured in order for this to happen.
Exactly.
Like this is what they all exist for this to happen.
This is very well coordinated. And you know what? This is our next slide. Let's look at America, because this is what I'm sure we're going to have a lot of American viewers, especially in the replays on this. Here we go. COVID dossier, U.S. military intelligence agencies in charge of pandemic response. Number 1, National Security Council. And again, click the ref and you can see the documentation. FEMA/Department of Homeland Security, DHS. Again, click on the ref. Department of Defense, DOD, and there's a ref. Dates when those agencies were known to be in charge. Mid-January 2020, NSC classified COVID meetings started mid-January. March 13th, 2020, NSC officially in charge of pandemic policy in Pandemic Crisis Action Plan adapted. The U.S. government's COVID response plan. Again, March 13th. March 18th, FEMA/DHS takes over as lead federal agency, replacing HHS.
So yeah, and what's important here to realize is that also in many countries, and it's easier for us because we speak English, in English-speaking countries like the UK, there's a very similar process by which, although the public is being told that the HHS or the British equivalent of the HHS is in charge, actually behind the scenes, they have a different agency or a different committee that all of a sudden is in charge of, legally in the documents, but the public doesn't really know about it. Now, these documents are public. It says that the one about the National Security Council was leaked to the New York Times. But the one that says that FEMA took over as lead federal agency, that is in the public record. Nobody paid attention to it, and it's the same in every country, and it's almost on the identical dates in every country.
Wow. Well, imagine the odds of that, eh?
Oh, right.
Okay. The next slide on this is right from dossier. We're going through the dossier. Dates, types, and names of unprecedented emergency declarations. February 4, 2020, EUA declaration. There's a ref on that. February 4, 2020, retroactive from March 17th, PrEP Act declaration. March 13th, 2020, Stafford Act in all states simultaneously. First time in history. And as I recall from your listening to you folks, that allows them to give money to the states. That's what that's about for FEMA. Then the next heading here is military intelligence agencies involved in public communications /propaganda/censorship. Bullet point 1, government task force coordinated by the NSC controls all pandemic messaging starting February 17th, 2020. Several refs on that. Department of Homeland Security, DHS, a ref on that. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, there's a ref on that. Cyber Threat Intelligence League, CTIL, my goodness, crossover/UK ref. There you go.
So a lot of these, actually, that's another important point here. A lot of these were multi-country efforts. So for instance, if there are laws in the United States that nominally say that you can't propagandize your own citizens, So you can have the UK arm of the CTIL propagandizing US citizens, and you can have the US arm propagandizing UK citizens. And that was especially true among the Five Eyes countries. So Australia, Canada, US, UK, and New Zealand. So they can all just propagandize each other's citizens and kind of bypass whatever very, very weak laws there are that are protecting us maybe from being propagandized by our own government.
Yes.
So they did that.
By the way, this is a pattern in the 1990s, starting in the 1990s. Cell towers are all big, huge satellite dishes are along the Canadian border, pointed at the American satellite, the American cell towers. And then the other side, they're pointed at the Canadian ones. So that way they can spy on the other person's citizens and pass that intel to them so that they're not breaking the law. Same thing.
And actually, and that's exactly what they did. So for especially for the censorship operations, because you can't like directly attack your own citizens with censorship, they would have each other, exactly what you're describing. They would sort of flag each other's, misinformation and disinformation spreaders, and then they would pass that along to their non-governmental agencies or academic institutions like the Stanford Internet Observatory or any of these CIA run but ostensibly academic institutions. They would pass along a list of, these are the Canadian disinformation spreaders, and then they would go and they would censor them. And now what we see in the world, in the Western world, is that now they're assigning Europe the job of censorship to pretend that the United States is no longer censoring. Oh, we're in a new age. We're in an age of freedom because now we no longer censor. But the EU is really dangerous because they want to censor, right?
Yes.
That's what they're doing now.
Okay. Pardon me. 17. Military intelligence agencies involved in public communication /propaganda /censorship. Government task force coordinated by NSC.
That's the one we just read.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Next.
Thank you for giving me. There we go. Key figures in COVID response linked to military IC, UN, WHO. Deborah Birx. Oh, 4 references for her. Michael Callahan, a reference there. Also see Cywar by Robert Malone, MD, MS, Kindle version, page 237. Richard Danzig, 2 refs on him. Richard Hatchett, 4 refs on him. Matt Hepburn, 4 refs on him. Robert Cadlick, 3 refs on him. Carter Mesher, thank you. A ref on him. Matt Pottinger, reference on him. Mike Ryan, 2 refs. Luciano Borio, 1 ref. And Terry Aderim, reference on that person. I'll leave this up so people can snapshot this. These are the key figures of the COVID response linked to the military and intelligence communities and the WHO and the UN. They were actually
some. These are not the.
No, not the. These are
some.
These are the
I mean, a few of them, like Robert Cadlick. So Robert Cadlick is a very key figure. He's been a key figure since the 1990s. So I would call him one of the architects of everything that happened, and he's still in the government.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep. And and a lot of also one of the feature that you see constantly, especially with the military, but it's also with the civilian administrators and so forth. They a lot of it is so they would appoint these military leaders who are specifically very close to retirement, like General Perna, who was the chief operating officer of Operation Warp Speed in the U.S., was essentially plucked out of retirement to be put into this role. And like the last person on that list was Terry Aderim, which is she signed off on that last person. I recently added her. She signed off on the military vaccine mandate and immediately left office. So they will appoint somebody near retirement or even out of retirement. They do the task and they disappear. So they leave the stage. So nobody actually even knew. So maybe they were in 1 or 2 news releases at some point, and everybody forgets about them. But that's how they kind of switch the actors very quickly, so that it creates even more confusion, and you can't really trace what's going on.
You can't, right?
All right. Next, just a second time now. Don't forget the book, Deep State Goes Viral by Debbie Lerman. Read us the subtitle again, Debbie.
Pandemic Planning and the COVID Coup.
Excellent. Thank you. I highly recommend this book. I haven't read it yet, but I trust these people. That's not my first time interviewing Debbie and Sasha. Okay, and next, I just wanted to bring up, this is I'm not sure if this is the same one or not. I think this is different. The PrEP Act Declaration of Emergency for COVID has not been terminated. Despite the disingenuous statements that the pandemic is over, Trump 2.0 administration has made zero changes to the above described militarized structure of the COVID crime and continues the same unconstitutional activities while misleading the public. I have published an open letter to the current HHS Secretary, RFK Jr., calling on him to exercise his authority and formally terminate the declaration of COVID emergency under the PrEP Act, which serves no public health interest, but only provides a thorough liability shield to the criminal PPP cartel. What's the PPP again?
Pandemic Preparedness Plan.
Thank you. And I would just say that's the same in Canada. We have not rescinded anything here too. We are still in that emergency, and it's for COVID at least for till 2029. I'm sure for bird flu and the other ones that you have in the States will probably be the same.
Yeah. In the States, we have 9 total declarations. They go until so the COVID is until 2029, and some of them go until 2032 even. And so they have been extended like before in early 2000s. So the anthrax, the Ebola, Marburg, avian flu, pan influenza.
Did you get a letter, by the way, and a response to your letter?
No, I did not get a response.
Okay.
I published an open letter. I texted it to RFK Jr. I have his phone number. I'm pretty certain he has seen it, but I have not seen any response. And I also have not seen any evidence that he's even publicly acknowledging it. I know he knows it because, I've interviewed with him. We have a recording of, it's called Militarized Healthcare podcast on his podcast 2 years ago, where we walked through essentially this material, especially as it relates to PrEP Act and military operation. So he's fully aware of this, and he's fully aware of his own authority to terminate this declaration. So that's actually in the law, in the US law, in the PrEP Act, it's written in such a way that the HHS secretary has unilateral, unreviewable by Congress, unreviewable by judicial branch authority to issue or terminate these declarations. And once the declaration is terminated, the pharma companies cannot ship the product anymore, and nobody can do anything with these COVID products anymore because they don't have the liability shield. Yes. And so he could do it in 15 minutes by writing a memo to Federal Register. But he has not done that, and it doesn't seem like he's even acknowledging that this is an issue. And that only says that whatever the power was in charge is still in charge. Mm-hmm. And it's not Trump, and it's not Biden, and it's not Democrats or Republicans. There is a power that has them all on the leash and has them all healed, whatever that power wants to do, which obviously intend to harm us all.
Correct. And just the other day, it was like 2 days ago, there was a disclosure that a state was now suing the government over the COVID response being harmful. And I just thought to myself, and the vaccines and everything, I just thought to myself, yeah, that's going to be, the DOJ is going to immediately rule that, sorry, you lose, because under the actual military law we're under, the state of emergency we're under, they can do that. All the countermeasures do not have to work. They do not even have to be efficacious or anything. They don't even have to be tested. And that's why, even though we're in a state of the world right now where we know those vials have like massive amounts of DNA. It was a bait and switch, right? So the production method they used for the little baby trials that Pfizer did or whatever, the production methods were much cleaner. The one they did the rollout had like 50 to 100 times more DNA in it, fragments, SV40 and such, which is causing turbo cancer and all kinds of problems with varying amounts of intensity of different batches and that kind of thing.
And actually, while we're still on this PrEP Act, today, actually at 3 p.m. Eastern, there is a hearing you can sign up to hear the audio of it. It's in the United States District Court, District of Massachusetts. The case was filed in Florida by Jeff Childers and for this nonprofit called Moms for America, and it's challenging constitutionality of PrEP Act. So today they're supposed to have an oral argument, and I signed up to listen to the audio, and you can do it too, on the Massachusetts, the United States District Court, District of Massachusetts. you can request participation in this. So I'm very interested to hear what happens in that hearing. My prediction is going to be that what you just said. So Jeff is going to make an argument that PrEP Act is unconstitutional, and the court is going to somehow wiggle itself
I will
out.
tell you how. I'll tell you how. Standing.
Okay. But yeah, either by standing, or they'll find a way to wiggle out of even acknowledging that this is an issue.
Standing. They use standing. They're going to say standing. You have no. So standing means, do you have grounds for bringing this case? Are you harmed by something that allows you to bring this case? And they're going to say you don't have stand. That's what they say. So that's my prediction. We'll see.
So again, everybody, this is because the PrEP Act and the States of Declaration, both in the United States and all the NATO countries, has taken away all of our constitutional rights, all of our rights to be suing over these measures, these countermeasures, because we are in a state of CBRN, chemical, biological, radionuclear attack response protocol. And these countermeasures are all, you cannot, there's no liability. So that's why this has to be stopped, or we're going to be, they're going to do it for bird flu. It's going any minute now, we know that's probably going to come. So we've got
I'd like to also say something to some people who I talk to, who are still convinced that there is a very big danger of just zoonotic pandemics. So really convinced, because we've been propagandized for so long. So let's say we take out the whole bioweapons thing, and we take out the whole military thing and all the conspiracies and everything that we've been talking about. There's still people who are convinced that there's a huge danger of viruses coming from animals, or because we interact so much more and we fly around the world so much more. So I just want to say, academically and scientifically and historically, that is a lie.
Yes.
It's not even just maybe true, maybe false. There is a really, really good academic research team that is at Leeds University and Brownstone, and it's called REPAIR, REPPARE, and it's about studying the actual documentation, scientific and historical, for pandemics and epidemics. And what they have shown is, for instance, in the 20 years leading up to COVID, when we were told that there is an increasing, ever increasing chance, in fact, it's inevitable that we're going to have a huge outbreak from a zoonotic virus very soon, in those 20 years. And why? Because we're all traveling around. That means that we all have better natural immunity to everything, that we're all interacting. It means our immunity is actually better. So it means there's a lower risk. But other than that, that's theoretical. Factually, in the 20 years leading up to COVID, in the entire world of 8 billion people, an average of 10,000 people a year died from any epidemic or pandemic potential virus anywhere in the world. 10,000 people a year. That's 0%. Out of 8 billion people. So basically, to every year average, I mean, there might have been a year when there were 100,000 because there was one big outbreak of SARS or MERS or something like that. But SARS, MERS, Ebola,
those are all gain of function. Those are all invented.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Don't say that.
All right. Okay.
Let's pretend
all right. Sorry.
We know. Yeah, because that's what, no conspiracies.
Okay.
No gain of function.
No.
There's just natural viruses everywhere that happen and that we all get natural immunity to, right? But these are very dangerous ones. We have a list of them. Those are the ones that we have PrEP Act declarations for. We have SARS, we have MERS, we have Ebola,
so we have average
H1N1, average 10,000 a year.
Right. Now
that's nothing. Zero. That's zero.
Let's look at the cost of the response in terms of 10,000 deaths. We're looking at 17 million deaths confirmed worldwide. Not confirmed is not the right word, but very painstakingly estimated, but looking at all the data, and that's by Denny Ricoeur here in Canada, and that's backed up by Ed Dowd, former BlackRock fund manager, gone great and gone to help mankind now, getting the largest insurance companies in the world to share their data with him on all-cause mortality, which in 2024, we are still in Q4, 22% excess all-cause mortality in children, and in adults stratified from about 5 or 10 to 15% stratified by age. Now that's in the United States. In Canada, we have more higher rates of vaccination, so that's going to be much greater. So compare 10,000 a year to 17 million spread over 3 or 4 years. I mean, we're talking
and I want to
orders of
specify
magnitude more harm from the measures than if we had just not done anything. Anyway, go ahead.
I was just going to specify when you said 17 million, that's
Yes.
from the vaccines. That's not from the virus. Because
Yeah, I'm sorry, not from the right. I'm talking about
some
the
people
countermeasures.
think,
The countermeasures.
I just want to say,
Yeah.
some people think that 7 million people died in the world from COVID. So when I say to people, COVID didn't kill anybody, they say, what do you mean it killed 7 million people? And I say, well, actually, no, it didn't kill 7 million people. But let's say even if it did kill 7 million people in a world of 8 billion, and then we destroyed the entire world and killed many millions more with the countermeasures and with the lockdowns and with the hospital protocols and all of that stuff, you know, even if it was 7 million, which it was not.
But Debbie, I just want to, it's important to point out that the CDC clarified, I think it was in 2022 or 2023, they came out and admitted that 94% of the people that they reported died from COVID actually died with COVID.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, they were tested either after they died or tested on admission to the hospital for a different problem, and then put on the COVID ward and finished off with the COVID protocol.
Correct. Remdesivir, 53% mortality, full pressure event, 90% mortality.
Yeah, and for that 17 million number from Denis Rancourt, for people who were, he estimates, were killed by vaccines, that's actually a short term. It's only within sort of a year of, based on their.
That's right. That was 2017, or sorry, just two years into it. We're now,
but it doesn't take into account all the long term effects. Such
exactly.
As cancers are now becoming a bigger turbo cancer is a bigger wave.
Yeah,
and there really is a turbo cancer. I have a friend. I lost a friend to this. You too, yeah. And it's devastating. It's basically from diagnosed. They typically get diagnosed already at stage 4, and these are not people who have like no health care and don't go to the doctor for annual checkups. These are people with like high means, high net worth, take care of their health, have access to health, go to the doctors, and then immediately they get diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and they're dead within months after that, and nothing can stop it. That's what we call turbo cancer.
Yes.
And that's what these vaccines induce.
Yes.
And so that's not counted by Denis Rancourt at all. Also, the effect of sterility and effects of miscarriages, that's also not counted at all.
Fertility, and it was crashed.
Yeah, fertility.
And now I want to point out that these things that we're talking about, cancer, fertility, I would add autoimmune disease and heart disease. Those are the 4 things that are demonstrably extremely high because of the vaccines.
Yeah.
Those are the things that we now have in the United States, our beautiful MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. And they will tell you that those things have been increasing for many, many decades because we live in a toxic stew. So I just want people to understand why they're saying that about the toxic stew. They are saying that about the toxic stew so that you don't think about how, the toxic stew is bad and it's been doing bad things for many decades, but they don't want you to look, they want you to look at the curve that's been increasing from 1975 until 2025. They don't want you to look at the spike that happened in 2021.
Like that.
The spike.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you hear that we're living
yeah.
in a toxic stew, and when you hear, you have to pay attention to the specific conditions, and they always do this: cancer, autoimmune disease, fertility, kidney disease, all the things that we know are related to the vaccines. They will always list those first as the result of the toxic stew.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, and they will ascribe, so I call MAHA strategy anything, ABV strategy, anything but vaccines. And it's designed as ABV. It's designed for you to talk about food dyes and soda and ban it for the poor, but Trump can guzzle his. No problem, right? So they will talk about this kind of stuff. They'll talk about pesticides even. They will talk about fluoride in water, but they will not address vaccines at all. And that's how it's designed to continue this operation.
Yes, exactly. So we're 90 minutes, I know, because we started 2 minutes late, and it's now a 91st minute. So We should probably start to wrap this up. I have just one question, Sasha, because after 25 years experience in conducting clinical trials in the pharmaceutical industry, what did not smell right about the COVID narrative when all the news broke?
Well, so the first thing that didn't smell right is how they started demonizing hydroxychloroquine in around March, April of 2020. There was a humongous government-driven campaign, FDA-driven campaign to demonize hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin and vitamins and standard treatments for cold and flu, and even going as far as to ban it, forbid pharmacists to dispense it, forbid doctors from prescribing it. That was, to me, that was shocking, absolutely shocking, because I knew that, and also the danger that they ascribed to hydroxychloroquine, I knew for a fact, because I was on the committees with FDA about this issue. I knew for a fact that the FDA knew that this product does not have this issue. But they were falsely ascribing it and propagandizing the public, again, lying to the public from all outlets, that this is going to cause cardiovascular events, but it doesn't cause cardiovascular events, especially not in short-term use. Like hydroxychloroquine can be used for life for autoimmune conditions, or it can be used short-term, like 7 to 10 days. And in 7 to 10 day use, there's absolutely no way it causes any of this, of the stuff that they were ascribing to it.
Yes, and we do know as well that they actually don't forget the collusion and corruption was pretty deep. Some of the major medical journals published papers of studies where they gave like lethal doses of HCQ to people to cause them to have heart attacks and die. And so they could point to that and say, see, this is not safe. And then you would find out the study would be retracted later.
2 weeks later they retracted, but the damage is that there was another completely fabricated study. That was the one where, for me, there was a turning point. So there was a study published by Lancet, which was complete fabrication. That data set did not exist at all.
That was the one with it was basically a science fiction writer and a stripper that actually were working on that paper, and they fabricated all the data. But
it was published by Lancet. It's as premier journal as you get. And yet they published this completely BS, fabricated data set that didn't exist, retracted it 2 weeks later, never apologized. There was never a campaign. So there was a campaign to push the headline out, but there was never a campaign to push, oh my God, the scandal, Lancet published fake study.
And this is required in order for the FDA to grant their emergency use authorization for the COVID-19 vaccines, which you cannot do if there's a therapeutic that works. So they had to crush ivermectin and crush HCQ and vitamin D and zinc and all these other things.
So that to me was like, I was like, I have no idea what's going on, but I've never seen anything like this. And this is criminal. And why are they lying? And that's how I started looking into this whole thing.
Right.
And now we have COVID 2.0 with the avian flu. Same thing. They're crushing any thing that could protect you against it. And I agree, this whole virus, no virus, I don't really care. I don't care what you call it. And something that I wanted to point out here is we had a bombshell revelation here on Wednesday, I guess it was, in the public meeting of the Regional District Central Kootenay. I had the opportunity to ask a question. This is the regional district that was contacted by the government to accept the carcasses of these so-called diseased animals. So in their public questions, I had the opportunity to ask, and I said, when was the RDCK first contacted to prepare for receiving 400 ostrich carcasses? Are you strapped in? The answer, November 2024.
Before any ostriches got sick.
The first ostrich got sick December 10th. So this is not biosecurity. This is premeditated murder.
Exactly.
Now that's why timelines, Connie, that's such a good point. The timeline tells everything. It's just like with COVID. If they started planning in January 2020 when there was nothing happening, just like they started planning in November 2024 for the ostriches when there was nothing happening, then you know that it was premeditated murder.
100%. The day after I was able to put that question to them, then they had their full board meeting, and Katie Pasitny came into that board meeting in person. And she calmly stated, because there had been rumors circulating around that table for 2 days, where one of the members said that the farm had lost 2 court cases. So why are we giving this any airtime? So she came in and she said, I want to set the record straight. We haven't lost any court cases. In fact, we won a judicial review that we just got the decision on the 13th, which went against us, but that wasn't a court case. It was a judicial review. So anyway, she was able to get that out and get it stricken from the public record. What happened after that was absolutely amazing. So at the end of the meeting, the board came in and passed a motion unanimously that they would refuse to accept any of the ostrich carcasses unless there was clear proof that these birds were actually infected before they kill them.
Yes.
So imagine that. We have a local government finally taking a stand for common sense and accountability. But what happened after that is insane. The public support went off the charts with busloads of people showing up at the farm to protect the farm from anybody coming in. And whether you know, I don't know if you know this, but while all this is going on, we had a lone gunman on the grassy knoll who shot one of the birds.
Yeah. And we think we know who it is too.
Killed her while she laid there sleeping. So that aside, the busloads were showing up at the farm to defend this farm.
And then all of a sudden, 5 people come out and start playing a counter narrative. 6 people. Would you try and compress this up if you can? Yeah, go ahead.
So all the support began to swell for the farm, and within the same day, 6 prominent people in the freedom fighting world start putting out their propaganda, telling people, don't go there, you're going to get beaten by police on horses, they're going to gas you, they're going to beat you with batons, including
it's a biohazard to be in there. You might get sick from H5N1, they said.
One of these guys went on to say that there is an order in place by the Canadian government that anybody on that property is going to be mandated to take an avian influenza vaccine.
Lies.
It's 100% lies. But talk about spreading the fear. So of course people start leaving. They don't want their bank accounts frozen. They don't want this. They're on private property. This isn't the same as the trucker convoy. Like it's so crazy. But
anyway. Can you name the names of these 6 people?
Oh, I did. I wrote a Substack on it the other day, and I'm being attacked big time.
So we have unlockalberta.substack.com. That's Connie's Substack. She just posted this like a day or 2 ago. Please go to her Substack and read about this. You can find out about all these individuals, who they are, and why is it that they're all suddenly jumping on this and trying to scare people away from the farm. Very suspicious. Yeah, same day. Yes.
And these are people with significant followers. It was absolutely insane. One of them comments on my Substack, she demands that I remove that. And I said, demand all you like, stomp your feet. I don't care what you're doing. I won't be bullied. Like,
oh my God.
Yeah, she demands I remove that Substack, and anywhere where I've talked about it. Yeah, I don't think so.
I think we're now at almost 100 minutes. So I wonder if we should maybe wrap up. If there's any, if that's okay with everybody. Is there any last words you'd like to give? Or
well, so I think we invite people, of course, to subscribe to our Substacks and to follow this in more detail. And we continue publishing on this matter and continue different initiatives that people can do in their respective countries to try to stop this and to bring awareness. And a lot of it hinges on people's compliance. So if, for example, this is a great example about the ostrich farm. Once masses of people show up there, they can't really come in and just, kill all the ostriches in front of all this group because, everybody will be videoing it. So
exactly.
That's how we stop them. We stop them by our own non-compliance and by supporting other people who are fighting. And so that's my message.
Okay.
And give the deep state goes viral to everyone you know, because that actually explains what's happening and will make people hopefully not comply.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to say that the evidence is overwhelming and people are starting to wake up, but they're going to have to do it much faster. This fight is far from over. And, we invite the world to pay attention because what's happening to these ostriches is a symbol of something much, much larger. This is all part of One Health Agenda, Agenda 2030, and the CFIA, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, who is at the helm of all of this, who, as the judge says, has been given parliamentary powers. They openly state in their court documents that they follow World Organization of Animal Health, the UN, and One Health Agenda. They openly state it. So, Rosa Corey warned us of this years ago, and here we are.
Yes.
So we have to wake up to the big picture here. And you're absolutely right. I'm sure the Canadian military is involved in this avian flu thing too. In fact, they're probably the assassination team that's coming in.
Or their contractor.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, for my own reasons, I just need 1 minute for everyone here to just bear with me for a moment. People will see on my X profile, I've written a book about non-consensual human experimentation, and since it's a tell-all book. And I was highly targeted by the intel agencies that were running that human experimentation in Canada. And to the point of suffering multiple assassination attempts that were plausibly deniable. And I'm leaving 5 days for a NATO country only since this has occurred 20 years ago in 2005 to present. I've only gone to a NATO country twice, and both times it's been very dangerous. The first time it was in Australia in 2018, and they tried to set me up in a very serious situation. And then last year in Greece, they arranged for an organized crime guy to hold me up with a 5.5-inch blade. And the exact words that he spoke and everything, they were actually related to me in a home invasion 3 years ago. So they set this whole thing up multiple years in advance. This is just a reminder to people that I once a year have to get a letter. I don't have to, but I insist on getting a letter from my doctor stating the letter is to certify that I have examined and have had discussions with Mr. Matthew Pauly. At no time has he ever expressed any suicidal ideation or plans, both in the past and the present. I've been in his family's physician for over 20 years. And just a reminder that I'm going to Japan, which is a NATO country and has a very well-known organized crime that could be weaponized against me. But let's just pray I come back in one piece. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for all this. This was the most amazing truth telling that I think, we need more of, and we need people to be aware of the COVID dossier. Please do go and see their Substacks and share this with your friends and family. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
There's the button. Okay. Bye-bye.